All right, so we have revised notes for this section. I'm going to have you go into the yellow note packet, go to the 7-4 page. We're going to cross this whole page off. I think it's going to make you more confused than for it. It's just a lot of stuff I don't think you're going to need to be successful. I think it might just make it take longer. So we're going to cross off that whole first page. We're going to leave this part at the top. We're going to do that in just a second. So then on the next page, leave this part where it says finding the geometric mean, but then you can cross off that whole bottom where it says corollary 1 to theorem this and corollary this to theorem that. We're going to do it a little differently and try to make it a little bit less complicated, and then we're going to keep this on here for practice if we need it. If we don't need much more, we'll see how our example goes. So we're going to significantly cut the notes down. We're going to go to this page first and just do the top part, and then we're going to go to that revised note sheet to deal with the rest of it. So the first thing we're going to do here is have a vocabulary word. We'll get that on a note card at some point, probably not today, because I think tomorrow's day is easy compared to today, so we'll have time tomorrow. But it says, proportions in which the means are equal occur frequently in geometry. And I told you I didn't really care about means and extremes, but I want you to write this on the top. X over A equals B over X. Go ahead and write that down. And consider the A and the B the numbers, and X is the variable. The geometric mean is what you get when you solve this for X. And we know that when you solve, you always cross multiply. So when I do X times X, I get X squared, correct? So you're going to get X squared equals, when you're doing a geometric mean, if these are the same, that's why they call it a mean, because these are technically called the means. And then you say it equals A times B. So to solve it, you have to take the square root. So really, all you need to do to find a geometric mean, this would be considered the A and the B. Let's go write that on here. A and the B, the A and the B, the A and the B. When you find a geometric mean, all you have to do is take the square root of what you get when you multiply them. So it's really easy. So we're going to start with letter D because it works out nicely. This would just be the square root of 4 times 16. And so you multiply those under there and you get the square root of 64. Logan, what's the square root of 64 for me? 8. Okay? 8 is called the geometric mean of these two numbers. All right? And it's done. The only thing you have to watch out for is you do need to remember from our algebra review how to simplify roots. So I do the square root of 6 times 15, which would be the square root of 80 if you multiply those, but you can't leave that, and you can't leave a decimal. So you have to remember that you're looking for one of those perfect squares. Let's write them down the middle. 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7, and I don't need to look past halfway. So let's just quickly review that and see how it goes. Which one of these numbers looking this way is the first one to go into 80? And if you don't know, you take out your calculator, you divide it by 36, you're going to get a decimal. You divide it by 25, you're going to get a decimal. What's 80 divided by 16, Julia, on your calculator? It's going to be a nice 5. So that's where we say, well, 16 is our winning one. And we write it like this. And we don't go decimal, we'll call it 4 square root 5. And we quizzed on those and you guys were really good at it. We don't need to do letter C because you're going to get root 80 again. So we're just pointing arrow at that one. But I want you guys to try letter B. If it goes well, we'll move on to something else. If not, we'll practice them a little bit more. So the geometric mean is the square root of what you get when you multiply them. I know you can multiply those. I want you to find the perfect square that's living in 120. And it'll be one of these. Once you find it, you're done. If there isn't one, it's done. So go ahead and hop on your calculator and ask yourself, does 49 go in? 36, 25, 16, 9, 4. If none of those work, we get to quit. If one of them goes in, we're going to break it apart. You already found it? What'd you find, Julia? Did 25 go in there?
Yeah.
I don't think it does it? Do 120 divided by 25. What does go in there, though, guys? Did someone find something? You should. What is it, Katie?
I didn't get it yet.
Let's go try it. Divide it by 36. You'll get a decimal. Divide by 25. You'll get a decimal. I'm not sure about 16. Logan, can you do 120 divided by 16 for me? Even I'm not sure. Decimal? Ick. I know 9 won't go into it, just because I just know my rule for 9. And does 4 go in there? It does, right? And it goes in there 30 times, so we're going to break it into root 4, root 30, and call it 2 root 30. I'm going to pause the video, because like I said, I'd really like you guys to get a good chunk of your work done in class, and you've been really good about working on it. I want you to go to that new pink. So we're going to go to this note sheet that I gave you to kind of shorten the notes up. This is one of the harder sections in semester 2. Not just this chapter, but in the whole semester. Kids usually struggle with this. I'm experimenting with you guys. I'm going to see if I can make it easier. So what's going to happen is we're going to be working with right triangles. So go draw a nice big one like this. All right? And it says label the hypotenuse. You should know from last semester, that to get the hypotenuse, you had to cross from the right angle. So this guy's the hypotenuse of the big triangle. So when I talk about H in our work today, it's that guy. Okay? The next thing it says to do is draw an altitude. Well, that's a new word for you guys. An altitude is a height, and you need to hit at a 90-degree angle. Luckily, they're going to be drawn for you, but I think if you draw it, it'll make it a little easier. So I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to go and use some blue to draw myself an altitude to the hypotenuse. So what I do is I hop here, and I head across, and I hit at a right angle. So when you see that guy, you're going to put a little A on him. All right. It says how many right triangles are there now? And you'll see you had the original one, but when you drew the altitude, it cut it into 2 more right triangles. So you actually have 3 right triangles in there. So go ahead and put 3. And they're all similar, which means their sides are in proportion. But I think the easiest thing for you guys to do, instead of trying to pull all 3 out and match their sides, is going to be to use an acronym that I call HASL, H-A-S-1, S-2, L-1, L-2. I'm going to show you how you do that. So the first thing you have to do is head across from your 90-degree angle. And you're going to label it H. So in all of these, you're going to go, where's my big 90-degree angle? You're going to head across, and that whole side length is H. That's the first thing you're going to do. The second thing you're going to do is label the altitude. It will be drawn for you, but I'm going to draw it on this one. The altitude's going to head across and hit, whoopsie. I'm trying to get my marker to go. It's going to head across and hit at a right angle. So inside here, you're going to call it A. You're going to do it in order. You're going to do the H, then the A. These 2 right here are called segments of the hypotenuse. You can think of them as sides, or you can think of them as sliced, but it's these 2 pieces. I like to label the shorter one S1 and the bigger one S2. So the third thing you're going to do is label S1 and S2 on the hypotenuse into 2 pieces. So go ahead and, if you can do this, this section might be pretty easy for you. All right? The next thing you're going to do, so the H, you head across, the A is inside. This gets sliced into 2 pieces. I like to call the smaller one S1, the bigger one S2. Those 2 L's there, they actually stand for legs. Make sure you put L1 on the same triangle as you put S1 on. And then this one's going to be L2. If you can label those correctly, I think you'll have a lot of success. So we're going to put L1 with S1 and L2 with S2. Cole, do you know what I mean by putting it with it? like on the same triangle. All right, so we're just gonna practice this. I kind of spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make a really difficult section easier for you guys. If you had me first semester, you know I do that quite a bit. I hand out a different sheet. It's me trying to make it a little easier than what it's like in the notes. So we're going to practice that on the next page, if you can label them correctly. So I want you to go label them in this order. Remember, number 1 is the H. Number 2 is the A. Then the S1 and the S2, and then the L1 and the L2. This one might be rocky because it's your first time, but if you can label these, and if you can cross multiply, and if you make a good note card. So 3 things I think it'll go pretty well. If you're watching the notes, you should do the same thing. Label the H. I'll draw the altitude for you. It hits at a 90-degree angle, so it'll probably be like over here. And it will be drawn. I just think if you guys have to physically draw it, you'll have more of an understanding of what it is. 3 triangles are made, and that whole page of and a half of notes that we crossed off talks about how this piece goes with this one and this. It's kind of a mess. So we're going to pull out our 6 pieces. All right? Then we're going to practice it one more time. And then we're going to go to your worksheet, practice it one more time. And then we'll get to the math of it. Did I give you enough time to label them? So Katie, I had across from that big right angle. This whole side is H. The altitude is the slicer inside. It slices H into 2 pieces, a small side and a large side. How do we do? Good, Julia? And then your L1 needs to go with S1 and your L2 right there. How many of you labeled that one correctly? Most. We're going to try one more in your notes. Go try it again here. I'll draw the altitude. It has to hit at a 90-degree. All right? So now you go do it. Label the H, label the A. And on our note cards, we'll just write hassle, and I think that'll trigger the whole process. All right, Preston, where do I put that H? Across. It's the whole side length, so I like to make it big so I know it's that whole length. If this is 6 and this is 10, it's 16 across. All right, and then I put the A on that inside slicer. It's called the altitude. S1 is this one, S2 is this one, or vice versa, it doesn't matter. But I always like my S1 to go, I don't know why. And then I put L1 on the same triangle. How many of you did that right? Did we? Okay, now go to your pink worksheet. And let's go do it on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right? On number 1. Label the hypotenuse. You can just label it. You don't have to write QS. All right, so across, I bracket off that hole from Q to S and label it H. All right, and then the segments of the hypotenuse would be the 2 that the altitude splits. I'd actually do number 3 next. I'd put the altitude on ST, the one inside there. And then put your S1 on the shorter piece of the hypotenuse from Q to T. Put your S2 on the longer piece from T to S. And then put your L's on so they match. Do we have how to label them down? Let's go do number 5. I'm going to go to the worksheet with you. I like to not have a ton of examples in your notes if you're listening. So on number 5, let's make sure we know how to label these. Because before we can find missing pieces, we need to know how to label. So H is this guy, the whole way. A is this altitude inside. S1, this slice this hypotenuse into 2 pieces, small and big. And then L1, L2. What the heck, might as well go do number 6 too, since you're all listening. Might as well go kill off the homework. All right, so go ahead and label number 6. Head across from the right angle, this guy. Once we have that down, I'm hoping the math will go easy. That's my hope. So we should actually be done with a lot of the front stuff. Did you already label them, Tessa? Yep. All right, so I'm not going to call on you because I'm recording and they can't hear you. So H is this whole side. We put a small h on it. This is my altitude. H got cut into 2 segments, a short one and a long one. and then L1 goes with S1 and L2 goes with S2. A lot of time put into that because now with the math, if you can do that, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So let's go back to your notes. Our goal is going to be to find missing pieces, okay? And once you label them, I want you guys to write these 3 things in the box. They're going to go on your note card, so you don't need to memorize them. But these are the 3 proportions that you're allowed, or that are true, and that you can set up. You're going to have to decide which one to use. But then you just cross multiply, which is easy. All right, so go ahead and write those in there. Segment 1 over the altitude equals the altitude over segment 2. And write them in. We're going to get them on our note card. How you doing? I think the reason these are so complicated is if kids can't label it, you can't set any of this up. That's why I spent a lot of time labeling those pictures. I think it's going to make the math easy. Draw them nice and neat. Tomorrow we'll get them on our note card. We won't worry about it today. But when you're doing your homework today, have this page open. Did I give you enough time, Isaiah? Enough time? Okay. So if not, I'll come back to this. So here's what we're going to do. We're now going to work on solving. So before you even start trying to figure out what x is, you're going to go label this. All right? So let's go label our long side h. So how long is h? If I need to use h, what number am I going to use? 8. Okay? So h is 8. Y is the altitude. I'm going to go put a little a on there. 2 is the first segment that got sliced. 6 is the second segment that got sliced. This would be L1. You put it on the same triangle with S1, and this would be L2. So now you're going to say, I'm looking for L2. So you're going to go down here, and in these boxes, you're going to rewrite those. All right? And we're going to pick the one that deals with L2. So go ahead and write that down. Yeah. I could. But who are you going to, Harmer? Tell her I'll send you one, and I'm right in the middle of something. We're almost done, though. This is our last. Yeah, just tell her we were sending one when I get on my computer. So go write those 3 down. And then your goal, I don't think we need to practice this a ton. It's if you can label it, all you need to do is pick the one, okay, that involves your missing piece. So I'm going to go up here and circle this. X is the L2 on this picture. You're going to choose the correct one. Am I going to go yellow, purple, or blue? What do you think? Go ahead and tell me, guys. Blue. Exactly. I'm going to pick blue. I'm going to set it up, cross multiply, and solve. I'm going to follow it like a map. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say H, which is this hypotenuse, which is 8, over L2, which is the one I don't know, is equal to L2, also the one I don't know, over S2. What am I going to use for S2? 6. Do you see how if you know the parts? Now you're going to cross multiply. You're going to say 8 times 6, which is 48, equals x times x. How are you going to solve it? How do you undo x squared? Go ahead, tell me, guys. Take the root, yep. And then you're going to ask yourself if it simplifies. And we've done root 48 quite a bit. Which perfect square goes into 48? It's actually 16, thank you. 16 and 3. So you're going to say 4 root 3. You just got the x. All right, so if you can pick apart the pieces, you'll be good. Let's go look at the y, and then we're going to go practice on your homework, just to kill some off. But look at the y. It is an altitude. So are you going to pick yellow, purple, or blue? Yellow. Yeah, right. Do you get what's in my brain here? I'm trying to get you like a very straightforward math. We are going to pick for y, we would pick the yellow one. We would say S1, which is 2, over the altitude, which I have no clue, is equal to the altitude, which I have no clue, over S2, which is 6. How would you solve that? What do you think, Katie? Cross multiply. You go 2 times 6 is 12 equals y times y. And then Bjorn, how will I undo the squaring?
You gotta take the root.
Yeah, and I'm going to assume you guys have the simplifying roots down because you did it well on your quiz. So I'm just going to leave it like that. All right. What do you think? We're going to stop and go practice on your homework. And I'm hoping, I'm going to pause the video because that's good enough for that. We're going to go to the very bottom. Let's go try some odds. All right, so you need to have that sheet open from your, oh dang it, trying to slide. There we go. Let's go practice down here. You go label them. If you can label them, you can set them, pick the correct one. If you can pick the correct one, you can set it up. If you can set it up, you can cross multiply. So it all kind of flows very nicely. So this says, look at the example from your notes. We're going to go label these. Logan K, where am I going to put the H? We're going to hassle it. H, A, S1, S2, L1, L2. Where am I putting the H? Opposite that, this big longest side, which is 10, right? Where does the A go, Lily? Yeah, on that middle one. It's called the altitude, but it's inside of there. Perfect. S1 goes with the small slice. S2 goes with the large slice. L1 is actually my X. And L2 is actually my Y. What do you think, Lauren? Go look at these. And we're going to take a look at figuring out what X is. X is an L1. So set up the ratio for L1. You're going to have to look at your sheet. You're going to have to say, which one am I going to use? First, second, or third? Which one has the L1 in it? First, second, or third, Preston? Second. So he's going to go to the second one, right? And he's going to say H over L1. Preston, what are you going to use for the H? 10 over L1, which I have no clue, equals L1, no clue. And then Preston, what does it say goes on the bottom? You don't have to memorize it, you just have to use it like a map. S1, right? What are you going to use, Preston, for S1? 1. Done. And then Dominic, how do you solve it?
What do you do?
10 equals x squared. And then since you started, we keep going. How do I undo the squaring? What's the opposite of squaring? Okay. What's the opposite of squaring? Square rooting, right? Root 10, you'd have to ask yourself if there's a perfect square hiding in there, which would either be a 4 or a 9, and I can't go past halfway, so this is done. You're going to leave it, okay? Now we're going to go find the y value. So again, that's L2. So Julia's looking at her sheet. She's like, which one do I use for L2, first, second, or third? She's pointing at the third. You get it's very, in calculus, we call this very algorithmic. You do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then you have the right answer. All right? So Julia, go ahead and tell me the ratio you're going to set up to find L2. Go ahead. What does it say?
Oh, H over L2 equals L2.
So she's choosing H over L2 equals L2 over S2. Of the three, that's her pick. I feel like you guys are getting it. Okay, you're already, I think, working ahead of me, but that's okay. So she's going to go 10 over, I don't know, the y, is equal to I don't know over 9. Julia, since you started me, and Dominic did it last time, what do you do next?
Do 10 times 9.
Perfect. She's going to say 90 equals y times y. And then, Nina, how do I undo the squaring? Awesome. Love you guys. Root 90 is equal to y. You don't move on. You have to ask yourself if one of these perfect squares goes into 90. One of them should be very clear, right? What number are these here nodding, Alex? Which one of these goes into 90? 9 does. Yep. 9 does 10 times. So I'm going to go down here and say it's root 9, root 10. And so how do I write my final answer? What do I write it as, Adam?
I put 10 root 3.
Almost.
Oh, 3 root 10.
3 root 10. guys are ready to try one on your own. Go try number 14. While I pause this video here, if it'll let me. It keeps reading my. So you go try number 14. Go label them first.